Who want one last trip to the long trail?
Whether or not Eddy Gordo is popular and successful in Tekken 8 is really important because Season 1 is kind of already set in stone. Even though we don't know which characters those are, the developers probably know which characters they're going to do, and they're probably like so deep into the production of those characters. But Season 2, Season 3. If this first round of characters is not successful or get a bad reaction, then they will change and adapt and do things differently as time goes on. And that's why I think it's so important that we look at the first character, Eddy Gordo. And if you guys been following the channel before Tekken 8 even came out, I was doing a lot of reflecting on Tekken 7's DLC because we saw a roller coaster throughout that game's lifespan. And I don't want to see that repeated for Tekken 8. They have a lot of things that they're already dealing with, and characters being crazy or obnoxious or being viewed bad by the player base would not be good. So the first thing I want to talk about is his design. Now I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've been doing these polls since the game came out, where I was talking about which character designs do you like and dislike. You know, most of these, as you can see, Tekken 8 wins. Asuka is a rare instance where her Tekken 8 design does not end, but most of these the Tekken 8 designs end. Once again, Paul Phoenix is another case here, but if you go all the way down and you look at the original one that I did, this all started with Eddy, because when Eddy was first announced to the world, there was a huge divide on his design. A lot of people really did not like the hair that they were going with, but even in the poll that I did myself, 13,000 votes, you know, say what you will about that number, I think it's pretty big. Tekken 8 still managed to come out on top when you look at the statistics. The most current one when Eddy was released. Now this comes from a Reddit user who put out a bunch of statistics. A brief look at Tekken 8 metagame April 2024 edition. In the character usage section for most popular characters across all ranks, Eddy was number 1, followed up by Jin, King, Reina, and then Haran. We all know how many Reinas and Kings and Jins there are out there. So the fact that Eddy is eclipsing both of them and he is sitting first place, that says a lot. Another thing that I want to talk about, right, when you get past whether or not people are buying him, I also did a poll about that. 15,000 votes, 52% said no. But regardless of that, the people who did, they were all sharing their takes and their ideas on the character. The two most famous that I like to mention is one, John Ding and Abel de Mastro. I haven't seen that person's take on Eddy, but John Ding kind of was feeling a little bit off about the character. Even Spaghetti Rip, who loves Eddy as well. They feel like he has changed so much and he is not the same as past Eddys. This is the real reason why I started off the video talking about how many people were buying him, how popular he is, because a lot of people who like past versions of Eddy, they don't like this version of Eddy. And it's weird because this Eddy is successful and the developers probably will stick with what they're doing. Like a lot of people also don't like the 3-3-3-3 he has, and it completely like takes away like the idea of like playing a character, learning the character. I know certain characters in the past, like a Kunimitsu, like a Victor had 2-2-2, Katarina had 3-3-3, 4-4-4, but I think the difference with Eddy is that when you do 3-3-3, you're not just doing a string that allows for some kind of setup. Like you can't play Tekken 7 and just spam Katarina's 3-3-3 like and never take your hand off that button. Eddy in Tekken 8, you can. You're probably not going to win that much, but you can do some serious damage, and with the way that the game is operated, you can get kind of far. And that's what I think is different about Eddy, is that they changed this character's identity from kind of a poking, spacing, keep out, kind of like a, you know, very methodical, strategic character. 50-50s wasn't all of what Eddy did. He could do that, but it wasn't all of him. And they really changed his whole identity to become that. Now, here's the thing, right? When you think about the next character that's coming, whoever it may be, will they have this streamlined, is how the developers described it? Will they have a 4-4-4 combo? Will Bob and Armor King, who kind of operated as Mishimas in a way, they had Wavus, will that be taken out of the game in favor of like an automated combo system? I don't know. I honestly don't know what the developers will do. I know they emphasized that Eddy was a difficult character to use in past games, and they really wanted to make him easier because of that. Now, I also kind of don't agree with that either, because when you go back to past games and you look at his statistics, at least for Tekken 7, Eddy was a absolute monster. I keep a lot of the old Tekken 7 data just to reference it because we're gonna have to over the course of the game, as like things change and the developers say this, we can go back and see like, no, that was not the case. Eddy was not a difficult character statistically. So if you remove all the pay to win DLC, because yes, the DLC is pay to win, people are starting to say the same thing about Eddy. I'll talk about that in a second. But Eddy base roster, he is the 8th most deadliest character out of 36. That to me doesn't sound like a character who's difficult to play. That sounds like a character who's like winning a lot in comparison to everyone else, right? So that's the thing that I'm saying is like the developers, they said Eddy's difficult to use and they wanted to make him easier and streamline him. But when you look at the stats for the general audience, it says otherwise. So I feel like if they made Eddy easier and they feel like he's harder, what's to stop them from doing that to Armor King, who's under him, or Bob, who's right next to him? Now, on the topic of Eddy being pay to win, right, this is also something else that was very problematic in Tekken 7 and something I've been very much on the lookout for in Tekken 8. And we have some win statistics for Eddy. Once again, he's in first place, number 1. His win rate is almost like 40% greater than Panda's, which is, you know, Panda wins because no one knows the matchup. Eddy being the most played, but also winning the most, you can't jump the gun and say that he is pay to win because of that, because 2 reasons why I think that's it. 1, he's a brand new character, and a lot of people will struggle to learn that new character. 2, and I think this is the most important thing to factor in, the developers made the odd decision to start Eddy off at beginner rank. For those of you who know, when you get promoted, all the characters you don't play, the whole roster gets promoted like 3-4 levels underneath you, just because your skill as a player is increasing. But for some reason, they didn't do that with Eddy. So no matter what rank your highest ranked character is, when you switch to Eddy, you start off at beginner. And as a result, you will go on a 20, 50, 30, like 60 win streak and just decimate everyone. And I think that is also a very big contributing factor to 1, why Eddy's win rate is so high, but then 2, why a lot of people do not like the characters. I think Eddy is a very interesting case. A lot of people are playing him, a lot of people are loving him, and I want to see how this saga continues. At one point in time for Tekken 7, the DLC was so incredibly hype. And when they added in Leroy Smith and Fakram, some of the most busted characters of all of Tekken, it soured the whole experience. We have to be aware and mindful of that so it doesn't happen again. Or if it's looking like it's going to happen, we got to be very quick to jump on it, because I don't know if you guys been seeing the things that Bandai Namco has been up to elsewhere, but they're kind of not doing what's best for the consumer, and they're instead doing what's best for their pockets. And that can collide with our experience and create a very negative one. Even though I'm very satisfied with Yoshimitsu and I don't intend on buying anyone else, I know you guys are very much looking forward to your characters. But the same way how I was asking for Kunimitsu to be put in Tekken 7 and they gave us the daughter, and I felt like that was totally different from the original character, now Eddies are also going through that same thing, where the Eddy loyalists have been given Eddy, but he's not at all like the Eddy that they were playing. I just want to see if that repeats itself for next characters.